All right, let's get into it. Skyfall Sessions. We got a debate between Eylon Levy and Mehdi Hasan over the Gaza-Israel conflict. This one is going to be heated, so just a heads up. Let's get into it.
Welcome to Open to Debate. I'm John Donvan, and we are gathered for something remarkable here. A meeting between two men who disagree fiercely across an issue that has fiercely divided so many of us within families and on college campuses. And for that alone, for their courage in coming to the same stage, let us congratulate them at the outset, because we know how rare it is in our currently hyper-polarized culture for opposing viewpoints to be heard, spoken aloud, and in competition with each other under the same roof. But that is the essence of debate, and that is the value that we promote at Open to Debate. And so it is an honor to be here at New York's venerable Adler Hall, a crown jewel of the New York Society for Ethical Culture, where we cannot and we will not forget how the war in Gaza is steeped in pain and outrage and fear and anger. It's why this debate matters, and it's why it is natural to take sides, even necessary to take sides. But listening to the other side, which these debaters will be called to do with one another, and which I hope you will do as members of the audience just by being here, that may be a first step, at least in understanding how and why and exactly why we disagree. The question we have framed for this purpose, and that we will hear debated tonight, is this: were Israel's actions in the war in Gaza justified? Let's meet our debaters. Answering yes to the question, were Israel's actions in the Gaza war justified, I want to welcome Eylon Levy. Thank you. Eylon, you are the, if you can stay with me here, you're the former spokesperson for Israel in the October 7th war, co-founder of the Israeli Citizen Spokesperson's Office, host of the State of a Nation podcast. Welcome to Open to Debate. And here to argue no to the question, were Israel's actions in the Gaza war justified, I want to welcome Mehdi Hasan. Mehdi, you are founder, editor-in-chief, and CEO of Zeteo, host of Al Jazeera's Head to Head, an award-winning journalist. Welcome to Open to Debate.
Thank you for having me.
And gentlemen, thanks each of you for being here tonight. Let's start it with a handshake, and then we can begin the debate.
Glad to take this offline.
Thank you.
So let's get to our opening statements. We want each of you to take a few minutes to explain why you're answering yes or no to our question, were Israel's actions in the Gaza war justified? And when I say were, I just want to be clear, we chose that word to talk about Israel's immediate actions after what happened on October 7th up through today. It's everything. It's not this moment, it's not that moment, it's the course of things. Eylon, you are up first. Your answer to the question is yes. The floor is yours. Please tell us why.
On October 7th, Hamas perpetrated an act of genocide against the people of Israel. Its death squads invaded with a clear mission: to massacre as many people as they could, as sadistically as they could, and to take survivors as hostages. Hamas had a strategy: to lure Israel into an urban war and generate enough suffering that the world would pressure Israel to leave Hamas alone to do it again and again. Hamas slaughtered 1,200 people on that day at a music festival and in their beds. They cremated little children alive. They perpetrated barbaric acts of sexual violence. They beheaded, tortured, and mutilated their victims, alive and dead, and they did it with glee. And then they took over 250 hostages, including little children, paraded them through the streets of Gaza to jeering crowds, hid them in tunnels and homes where they are being starved and tortured and raped and executed. It was the deadliest terror attack in world history after 9/11, the bloodiest massacre of Jews since the Holocaust, and the opening shot of the Iranian regime's regional war against Israel on 7 fronts. At this point, Israel faced a choice, as Hamas immediately threatened to do it again and again until Israel was destroyed. To do nothing, or to do something. Both would have consequences. Doing nothing meant letting Hamas get away with October 7th, leave it free to do it again and again, only this time with thousands of dangerous terrorists released from jail and with its popularity skyrocketing. That's not an option. Doing something meant targeting Hamas's terrorists in accordance with international law in order to dismantle their ability to wage war and live out that threat to do it again and again. That was the choice that Israel faced after October 7th. Now, after October 7th, that campaign to bring Hamas down and bring the hostages home was the only moral response. Hamas exists for the sake of war, and for the sake of peace, it must go. Let me explain Israel's strategy. Israel's strategy is to get civilians out of harm's way so that it can target Hamas's terrorist infrastructure under their feet. Hamas's strategy is to keep civilians in harm's way so that it can use them to shield their military infrastructure. Israel left Gaza in 2005 and never wanted to go back, but Hamas seized power 2 years later, started firing rockets at our cities, and rigged Gaza's urban landscape for war.
Okay, I wanted to try to let this get through their entire opening statements, but it's very difficult for me to not say anything because the way this guy is able to paint this picture like Israel is in the right is so wild. And he's leaving out, relevant information. Obviously, there's a huge debate about this. This is why they're debating. Like Israel does have its own rights, but so does Gaza. And the way that he's painting this picture is absolutely... Let's just continue. This is wild.
They dug a network of military tunnels 1.5 times longer than New York subway under homes and schools and hospitals. They booby-trapped.
And here's the thing. He's talking about Hamas. He's making it sound like all of the Palestinians, like the Palestinians at large are doing this. When in reality, it's just Hamas. And Hamas is doing this in response to the apartheid state that Israel put them in. So I'm not saying, obviously, Hamas is wrong. Let me make that clear. Hamas is wrong. We are condemning Hamas. But at the same time, like that, Hamas is responding to the militancy from Israel.
Tens of thousands of buildings. They started firing rockets at our homes and our towns from inside their schools and their hospitals. In response, Israel's actions are to target Hamas's terrorists and to take unprecedented efforts to keep their civilians safe from their own leader's sick strategy to sacrifice them on the altar of jihad. That's why it keeps repeatedly urging them to get out of harm's way.
Whoops, my mic was off. Yeah, the way he painted that picture of sacrificing people on the altar of jihad, like, oh my, bro, this guy's a talker. He is definitely a talker.
From Hamas strongholds and flooding the area with over 1 million tons of aid because it keeps saying this is a war against Hamas, not the people of Gaza. Now, the suffering of my neighbors in Gaza is horrific.
And honestly, that is the only defense they really have is that, hey, this is attacking against Hamas, but they can say that it's attacking against Hamas while their actions are showing that they're doing genocide. So you can say, hey, my Gazan neighbors and stuff like that, but they're active because you could say one thing and do something else. And that's what's happening here.
Fake. I blame their psychopath leaders for launching this war, fighting it inside civilian areas, and refusing to release the hostages and surrender. Now, tonight's debate is about whether Israel's actions in the war in Gaza are justified, in a context in which I hope we can all agree none of the enemy's actions are justified. Because we are fighting a jihadist army that has as much respect for humanity and law as Mehdi Hasan has for the truth. Mehdi may say, I condemn Hamas's acts on October 7th, but he will not condemn its strategy, because he is part of its strategy. Hamas is counting on its defense attorney.
I don't even know if I recorded the last part. I keep on muting myself by accident, but this is about to get really heated because he's starting with the personal attacks, and Mehdi Hasan is taking it pretty well, but I don't know how long that's gonna last. I don't think the host is gonna like it, and I don't think they're gonna be able to keep themselves from doing the personal attacks on one another.
To shield it from the consequences of the war that it started and deflect blame onto Israel so it can do October 7th again, maybe because they share a goal that Israel shouldn't exist. Mehdi Hasan will say tonight that October 7th does not justify Israel's actions in this horrible war. My question then is this.
Eylon, I'm sorry, your time is up.
What does October 7th?
I'm sorry, your time is up. Thank you.
Oh, I'm glad he shut him down right there. He tried to continue a couple more words, and he shut him down.
Mehdi? Eylon, in already calling your opponent a liar, you have already crossed one of the lines of the culture that we try to establish here. I wish you hadn't.
I like that. I knew the host wasn't going to like that without even knowing the host. I already knew it. I could tell by the setup of this debate. Like, it's very classy. I knew he wasn't going to like that. Let's continue.
It's fine. I can do this.
You don't need to do that to make your case, please. Mehdi Hasan, you are answering no in answer to the question.
He's taking it
were Israel's actions in the Gaza war justified?
All right, so, ladies and gentlemen, the question, were they justified? Were the actions justified?
And it would be great if you didn't feel the need to respond to the personal attack, because it'll waste
We'll
time.
decide when we get there, John. Were they justified?
Bro, this is about to be
No, obviously not. Of course not. October the 7th, I think we can all agree, was a crime, a war crime, right? We can all agree on that. And taking hostages is a war crime. And those hostages should be released. But to destroy an entire place, an entire people in response is never justified. Never.
Never justified. Fully 100% agree. Never.
Justified. How are we still... I don't understand how we're debating this more than 40,000 deaths later. I don't understand how we're still debating this sitting in the comfort of New York, 7,000 miles away from a place that the UN Secretary General has called hell on earth. Justified?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing about the fact that we live in this wild world where there is an actual war going on, and yet across the sea, we're having a debate about whether or not this war is okay. The world is so wild, guys.
Justified? Was Israel justified in carrying out one of the most intense civilian punishment campaigns in history, according to Dr. Robert Pape at the University of Chicago, dropping 500-pound bombs, 1,000-pound bombs, 2,000-pound bombs on schools, hospitals, universities, bookstores, libraries, mosques, churches, refugee camps, apartment buildings, cemeteries, destroying...
He's making a really good case right now.
A higher percentage of buildings in northern Gaza than the Allies destroyed in Dresden during World War II.
And the only answer that Eylon can really give to this is, oh, that's war. Yeah, but this is horrid. This is not just war. This is like genocide. There is an aggressor and there is an oppressor. And yes, there's a hostile terrorist group on the other side, but the terrorist group they are killing so many civilians to get to the terrorist group that it is definitely not justified.
Reducing Gaza to 42 million tons of rubble while they got people out of the way? How is that justified? Dropping a bomb, for example, on a 6-story apartment building in central Gaza last October, killing more than 100 people inside, including more than 50 children, with no Hamas target in sight, according to Human Rights Watch, with no explanation offered by the Israeli military. Even till today, was that justified, Eylon? Was Israel justified?
Oh, I was muted again. Yeah, there's so much news that nothing is news anymore. That's what's so crazy. So much egregious things are happening over there during in this war that Israel is perpetrating with American dollars, and yet that news is really not news anymore because it's been going on for a year, and so many egregious things have already been done.
In telling people to go to safe zones and then bombing them and killing them in those safe zones. According to NBC, there were 7 deadly airstrikes.
7 deadly airstrikes inside of what is supposed to be called a safe zone. Come on, guys.
Between January and April, in areas that the Israeli military had specifically designated as safe zones, killing Palestinian civilians like Sabrine Sakani, who was 30 weeks pregnant at the time. She was killed in a safe zone in April. Her little baby, newborn baby, died less than a week later. Was that justified too?
Absolutely not. And he's eviscerating this guy because there is a right side of this argument. War should never be justified, and only the militant think otherwise.
Eylon, was Israel justified in killing a record number of kids in Gaza, 16,000 children, turning Gaza into what the UN has called a graveyard for children, according to Save the Children, killing more kids in the first 3 weeks that were killed globally in each of the past 4 years, killing little kids like 6-year-old Hind Rajab and her 15-year-old sister Leanne, firing 335 bullets into the car they were in. 335 bullets. And then killing the 2 paramedics who went to try and rescue them. Was that justified too, Eylon? Was Israel justified in killing a record number of aid workers in Gaza? Right? A record.
And I'm sure that the Eylon has an explanation for each of these things, right? Like, I'm sure there's an individual explanation for why each of these things are okay.
Number. Targeting again and again, systematically, car by car, according to Chef Jose Andres, a specifically, explicitly marked World Central Kitchen aid convoy killing 7 aid workers in the process. Was that justified? Was Israel justified in starving the people of Gaza, using food and water as a weapon of war, to quote both the EU and Oxfam? Was Israel justified in blocking aid trucks from going into Gaza simply because they carry things like crutches, nail clippers, and even chocolate croissants, according to the Washington Post? Was Israel justified in raping, sodomizing Palestinian detainees who were charged with no crimes whatsoever?
That is not justified, obviously. This is the way they are both good at painting like a picture, but I think this picture is far more effective because I believe that he's on the right side.
Hot rods up their rectums, putting hot rods up their rectums, amputating their limbs, according to CNN and the New York Times. Was that rape and torture justified, Eylon? Israel, according to the ICC chief prosecutor, who put out a statement calling for the arrest of Eylon's former boss, Benjamin Netanyahu, said that Israel may have military goals, legitimate goals, but the way they're carried out, killing innocent people, starving people, is criminal, he said. Criminal, think about that.
Criminal.
Eylon Levy is a former spokesperson for a man who the ICC chief prosecutor once arrested for war crimes. Eylon himself has produced a number of lies, sorry, John, in service of those war crimes. He has a bunch of tweets still up tonight which say that babies were beheaded on October the 7th, babies were baked in ovens, babies were ripped from their mother's wombs. October 7th was bad enough, but Eylon had to exaggerate it for atrocity purposes. Those tweets are still up. Why would you trust anything this man says to you tonight? Look, he's here. He's here. He's here to gaslight you, to defend the indefensible, to excuse the inexcusable, to justify the unjustifiable, but you don't need to. Tonight you can choose to be on the side not of cruelty, not of criminality, but on the side of the innocent people of Gaza who are being killed as we speak tonight, as we speak, by Eylon's former colleagues in the Israeli military on the orders of Eylon's former bosses in the Israeli government.
Holy crap, he does a really good job of painting this picture. And I see, like, I know they don't like the personal attacks, but the personal attacks in this case, I think he feels so passionately about this because he's pointing out that you're basically a warmonger in the context of this particular war. Like, come on, guys.
So yes, I choose to oppose this horrific and homicidal motion. Thank you.
So we're going to have a discussion with that's a little bit looser in format. But the first thing I want to say to each of you is, this mutual urination contest is not helping us understand the principles involved. All right, you think he tells untruths, you think he tells untruths. You don't need to keep hitting that point, I hope, to make your argument. And again, it's not what we're about. Eylon, I heard you in your opening statement say that the only moral response was for Israel to try to take Hamas down and to get the hostages home. I heard your opponent say that the manner in which it's happening is just enormous overreach with enormous consequences for an enormous number of people that he would certainly say, and I think a number of others would agree, are innocent people, not all of them, but some of them, and that represents an unjustifiable response. What we're talking about, it seems like, is proportionality. And I want you to address the issue of proportionality. This has been calculated in a number of ways. People have said that, as you said, it was the worst terrorist attack since September 11, 2001. But others would say that the number of people killed on both sides is wildly out of balance and therefore disproportionate. There's an issue to be discussed.
It's not just others would say. It is a fact. It's not even close. So really quick, let's hit you guys with the actual facts. According to the, I'm going to probably mispronounce this, but according to DW or the Deutsch, I cannot pronounce this correctly. But yeah, according to DW, the Deutsche Welle reported that around 1,200 Israelis were killed on October 7th, 2023. But as of today, over 41,870 Palestinians were killed, with over 997,166 injured due to the Israeli response. That is an egregious number, according to the Anadolu and Anjansi. So yeah, the proportionality is definitely a big deal here.
Discussed here. There's a principle to be discussed here, and that's proportionality. And what, in your view, justifies the proportionality that Israel has stepped up to in its response? And again, because I want things to move back and forth, I'll probably jump in on you after about 90 seconds, just so you have a sense.
Israel's response is proportionate to the threat that we face, which is the threat of annihilation. After perpetrating the savage atrocities of October 7th, the first thing Hamas did was deny that it did them. The second thing that it did was to threaten to do it again and again until Israel is destroyed. That is what is at stake. If this war ends...
Okay, this is a powerful point here, because yes, when you think about it, well, you don't think about like the 41,000, of course. You think about the fact that, yeah, they said that they would do it again, and they said they would continue to do it. And of course, it's not to say that one is more right for aggressing on the other. Obviously, Hamas is a terrorist organization, but it is to say something about the fact that, yeah, if they didn't do anything, then what would have happened? Of course, they should have done something. So that's why there's the question of the proportionality of this all.
With Hamas free, emboldened, and empowered to perpetrate more October 7th massacres, thinking that the world will keep saving it from the wars that it started. Now, proportionality is a term in international law. It doesn't mean that if they kill 1,000 people, you kill 1,000 people and call it quits. It means that for each strike, the anticipated collateral damage, the damage to civilians, cannot be excessive to the anticipated military goal.
And your argument is that that has been the principle Israel has observed.
Every military expert.
Wow. Every military expert. Okay.
Who has observed Israel's military efforts, including just recently in the Times, the Deputy Supreme Commander of NATO, has said that Israel is fighting in the most complicated urban battlefield that the world has ever seen, and he's satisfied that its rules of engagement and standard procedures are at least as rigorous as the UK and other Western allies. That's the former Deputy Supreme Commander of NATO.
Okay, so let's get into the facts. His claim is substantiated by the fact that John McCall, who serves as Deputy Supreme Allied Commander at NATO, called Gaza one of the most complex battlefields he's ever encountered, talking about the extensive network of tunnels that extends for over 200 kilometers and possibly into 500 kilometers, according to UWI and Defense Mirror. Also, IDF has rigorous rules designed to protect civilians, according to them, and they're supposed to do non-lethal roof knocks before strikes. And he told that these procedures were at least twice as strict as those used by the British military, according to LNet and UWI. Regardless of them saying this, I believe that they are like pro this war. They're pro Israel. They're pro what they're doing. And Israel has not actually been following these claims from what I've seen so far.
Mehdi.
So I actually want to agree. I want to agree with something Eylon said. Proportionality is a difficult subject, and we shouldn't talk about this in abstract. X number here, Y number there. Let's talk specifics. The problem with a lot of spokespersons of Israel,
Oh man, he's about to hit him with the raw fact. He's about to wop.
they want to talk in abstract. I want to talk in specifics. So if we talk about proportionality, we talk about discrimination, we talk about war crimes. Last October, shortly after October 7th, Israeli forces struck a 3-story residential building in Gaza City. They killed 15 members of the Al-Dos family, 7 children. According to Amnesty International, the survivors say no warnings. Eylon told us there were warnings. No warnings were given to evacuate. Amnesty found no evidence of any military targets in the area, and Israel to this day.
And that's what I was saying about the knock warnings. There's supposed to be non-lethal knock warnings. Apparently, that's not happening.
Has offered no explanation for that strike. So, for the dead Al-Dos family members, Eylon, can you tell us why they were killed?
And I'm sure there are many other stories like this of families that were attacked. Of course, these are anecdotal, but anecdotal evidence is usually, weakened when you're talking about a large population and individual instances and something's happening in America. But when it comes to a war in which bombs are being dropped on a regular basis, and there's story after story after story over the span of just the last 12 months, then yes, anecdotes become far more powerful and far more truthful in this respect.
Mr. Hassan, the IDF does not owe you immediate answers, and the fact that Amnesty speaks...
Oh, okay. So Israel does not owe answers of why they're slaughtering thousands of people. Got it.
The fact
Gold
that
standard of
Amnesty
military can't
speaks
answer a
to
simple
local
question.
witnesses intimidated by Hamas does not mean that there was not a military target.
But was
You
there?
take the
But was
fact-
there? Because Israel has never said there
Mr.
was a military
Hassan,
target.
Hamas booby-trapped 40% of Gaza's buildings.
Okay, so I'm curious of what he's about to say. If he's trying to blame it on a booby trap, but he's not answering the question directly. Of course.
It dug tunnels underneath homes and schools.
We're back
and
to
hospitals.
generalities, Eylon.
No,
Oh yeah, we're going back to generalities.
not
Why did you kill
generalities.
15 members of the
Mr.
Al-Dos
Hassan, I
family?
do
He did say, okay, I guess it's not horrible to say what did you when he's supporting Israel and he's from Israel and a spokesperson for Israel, so maybe that's okay to say, but we'll still see.
Let
not
him
know,
speak,
and I
please.
do not need to explain
You
every
do.
single
You literally
strike.
do. That's what you're here today.
Mehdi,
You're here to explain.
Mehdi,
No,
Hold
Mr.
it.
Hassan. Because in this
So he doesn't have to, of course you don't have to explain every individual strike, but you should explain some of the ones that he's calling out.
war, Israel is seeking to neutralize the threat of a terrorist army that
Abstraction.
has a deliberate
Specifics, please.
strategy.
I'm gonna
of
have to get the mic cut
sacrificing
switched,
innocent
please.
civilians.
Thank you. Sorry, go ahead.
Hamas has a deliberate strategy of sacrificing its innocent
Yeah, I'm mostly on Mehdi's side on this conversation, but yeah, for the sake of the debate, he's got to let Eylon continue.
civilians, and this is a strategy that you are enabling by always deflecting blame onto Israel instead of considering the real question of why Hamas built its military assets into civilian areas. Under international law, Israel is obligated to give precaution where those feasible precautions are possible.
Okay,
and
let's
it
let-
has done that by
let Mehdi come in,
repeatedly
please.
urging
I need to say two things. To be clear. To be clear. "15 people were killed, 7 children." You were spokesperson for the Israeli government at the time. Israel has never given an explanation. When you say, I do not need to explain myself, you literally do. You were the spokesperson for the government that committed a war crime, and you came to a debate tonight to defend war crimes. So you literally do.
Oh, that was an uppercut right there. You literally do. Yeah, that's what you're here for. You're here for a debate. He's absolutely correct.
Number 2, you'll notice, John, how Eylon quickly went to abstract generalities. Let's talk specifics. Let's talk about tunnels. I think
Eylon is incredibly unprepared for this, whereas media is prepared. And again, because I think it's easier to argue when you're on the right side of an argument. I think Elyon's mostly on the defense here.
To hide tunnels under civilian targets. I wish they didn't do that. But when Israel shoots children in the head, 3 American doctors went to Gaza. Dr. Feyyaz Sidra, Dr. Irfan Galaria, and a Jewish American doctor called Dr. Mark Perlmutter. All of them came back at separate times, said children were brought into hospitals we were in with gunshot to the head, sniper shots. Perfect. Exact targets. There is no tunnel that justifies shooting toddlers in the head. Israeli snipers.
Yeah, and just to be clear, so you guys know, he's not lying here. These claims are substantiated by the New Arab, ITV News, and Arab News. Yes, there were several toddlers, several children with sniper shots, highly accurate, deliberately targeting children, being shot in the head by snipers. True claim.
Well, you can tell us why. You can defend that.
Mehdi, Mehdi, forgive me for going abstract, but I do want to go to some principles here. So you are listing a number of specific
Yes.
Incidents that you feel cumulatively add up to a very, very much an overreaction.
War crimes, John, not an overreaction. War crimes.
All right, you call them war crimes.
Not just they are war crimes. These are if you're shooting kids in the head with precise sniper shots, that is most definitely a war crime. It's not even a question. Like, why are we even asking this?
In not so much in the abstract, but what would have been an appropriate response to what happened that would not cross the line to proportionality?
Good question.
It's a good question.
Yeah, that's a good question. For him,
It's a great question. So I'll answer that in two ways. One is, I'm not someone who has ever, and you can look at my record on this, whether it's the UK, the US, both of my countries, I'm American, British. I've criticized targeted assassinations, even by the US and the UK. I'm the loser, and people in New York, there's going to be an unpopular statement, who says that people like bin Laden should be tried, not assassinated. That's who I'm, a stinking liberal. But given we live in a world where America, Britain, Israel, multiple countries, India is now accused of targeting its enemies, killing its enemies, you could have tried to take out the leaders of the group without wiping out the entire place. I find it interesting that Israel, hold on. I find it interesting that Israel.
This is where this conversation does get really complicated, because it's definitely not as simple as that. I mean, obviously, there are a lot of people that are in the defense of Israel, and they may be biased, but if, like Levy has a point when he talks about the fact that several military commanders said that this is literally one of the most difficult war zones in history, but Israel is hiding behind that excuse to continue to carry out what is literally war crimes.
Was able to pinpoint kill Ismail Haniyeh in a house in a foreign country.
Oh.
But when it comes to Gaza, when it comes to the Gaza Strip, they had to wipe out the whole place. They had
Of course they have to wipe it out, because this is called genocide.
to reduce it to 42 million
Okay,
tons of rubble. And one final point,
Yeah.
I just got on factual points. Eylon, they're not your neighbors, they're people you occupy, just to be clear.
That is very true. This is an apartheid state. For a little bit of history on this. All right, to clarify, he's calling this an occupation because back in 1967, there was a Six-Day War in which Israel had a military presence in Gaza since 2005, according to the Encyclopedia Britannica in the History Channel. Despite the withdrawal, Israel continues to control Gaza's border, airspace, and coastline, making this officially an occupation even after 2005, where they had supposedly pulled back out. So yes, this is an occupation.
So I'm hoping you'll let point number 2 slide, and please take on point number 1. Mehdi's saying that there would have been a self-defense response that he feels might have been more appropriate, that he also feels would have been within the capability of the Israeli military. What's your response to that?
Notice the general pattern of argumentation we're seeing here. Gosh, October 7th was terrible. Hamas shouldn't have done that. Gosh, Hamas built tunnels under schools and hospitals. It shouldn't have done that. The question is what Israel may legitimately do once
No.
Hamas
That's not the question I asked you.
No, but I'm explaining.
It's what you did.
And
Eylon.
his response.
It's what you did.
And Mr. Hassan's response is, well, if Israel could take out a terrorist leader thousands of miles away who wasn't expecting that he could be targeted, surely it can reach the terrorists who are hiding inside a bunker under a hospital, probably surrounded by hostages as human shields. Hamas rigged the battlefield. Hamas rigged the battlefield to shield its military assets under civilians, and it left Israel with no option of getting to those leaders.
Okay, no
other
option,
than going
no other
through
option.
The civilians,
No option
which
is what your
why I
opponent is saying.
repeatedly
So first
asked
of all,
them to evacuate.
as we've discussed, and I'm here all night, Eylon can take his time, They killed 15 members of the Doss family, 7 children.
We can continue this at the reception afterwards if you want.
And I'll happily ask you, why did the government that you served in kill 15 innocent people in an apartment building? Hold on, this is very important because there's no evidence Hamas was there. He's not even tried to make that claim.
Mehdi, just in the interest of time, you've asked it. It's become a rhetorical
question. It's
question.
crucial to the argument. Eylon wants to go to abstract tunnels.
When he says there was no other option, what is your response to that?
Well, no one in the world agrees with that. That's why Israel's become a pariah in the world.
Oh, right. Of course. You're saying there's no other option for targeting a building that wasn't even a military target. Or same thing with the killing the children, shooting them in the head. Like, bro, this is obviously a genocide. It's not even a question.
What was the option, Mr. Hassan? What would you have had us do?
Even Joe Biden, the most
what does October 7th justify?
I already answered that question. Even Joe Biden, the most pro-Israel president of my lifetime, who has backed Israel with weapons and arms, has gone on the record saying too much indiscriminate bombing. You've killed too many innocent people. Even the people on your own side say you're killing too many people, Eylon. But Mr. you will not accept that.
Mr. Hassan, too many people have been killed. The number of people who should have been killed is 0. Too many people were...
Okay, you make the good point because 1,200 people were killed initially, but do you respond with 40 times that number and call that justification, or is that homicide? Come on, guys.
Killed when Hamas's psychopath leaders, who are funded by your paymasters in Qatar, maybe you share a slap.
All right. Let's please bullet with that.
I'm going to respond to that.
No. It's another cheap shot, and I don't want to entertain cheap shots.
Oh man, I he said it's another cheap shot. I like how this guy regulates the debate. It's very difficult because both of them are obviously like very experienced debaters, and he's having a hard time. But I love that he like points out the cheap shots. At least you're trying, man.
I want to go to you, Eylon, with this question. When you say that the war is justified, killing in war can only be justified if it serves a greater good. What's the greater good that's being served at this moment?
Mr. Donovan, this war is not justified because Hamas should not have started this war in the first place.
Well, the question is whether you are answering the question. Yes, Israel's actions are justified.
The response is an attempt to prevent the next October 7th massacre. Well, on October 7th, Hamas showed us what it was capable of doing, and they immediately went on TV and said October 7th, October 10th, October 1 millionth. Everything we do is justified. We're a nation of martyrs, they said. We're proud to sacrifice millions of martyrs if that's what it takes. And we are trying to stop October 7th and to do so in a way that minimizes the...
You know, this is really good for talk. And in theory, it's really good that, yes, of course, you should respond to a terrorist organization appropriately. But their actions are showing otherwise, man. They've killed 41,000 people. Most of them have been non-combatants. Like, come on, man. Can we please stop with the charade?
Cost of their civilians.
Let me just deal with the last point and the previous point, which is the idea. Let's just be real here. And a lot of military experts say this, but you don't even need military experts. You just need common sense. The idea that you prevent another October the 7th or that you destroy Hamas by making tens of thousands of Palestinian children orphans is insane. It doesn't protect Israel. Forget Gaza. It doesn't protect Israel. And let me just deal with this classic. My paymasters in Qatar. Yes, I host a show for Al Jazeera English. Let's just be very clear. In December, the New York Times published a very, very long piece.
Come on. Nobody
very
cares.
important
Nobody
here. Very
cares.
important here. It's relevant to the debate. The New York Times.
All right, make it relevant.
Please
make it relevant.
New York Times published a very long piece which said a month before October the 7th, the head of the Mossad, David Barnier, went to Doha, Qatar, and the Qataris said, "Do you want us to keep sending money to Gaza?" And he went back to Netanyahu. He said, "What should I say?" And Netanyahu said, "Yes, please." And he went back. He said, "Yes, please send the money to Gaza." Eylon went to work for the government of Benjamin Netanyahu a month afterwards. He's never apologized for that to the Israeli people. Benjamin Netanyahu's never apologized to that to the Israeli people. So if anyone should answer questions about Qatari funding of Hamas, allegedly, reportedly, whatever you want to call it, it's the Israeli government that facilitated it for many, many years.
Wow, and these are all substantiated facts. I don't know that they're out of context. I don't want to speak too liberally on that, but I do know that is a substantiated fact.
Eylon was in that government. He's the spokesman. spokesperson for that government.
Answer. It was a terrible mistake to allow Qatari money into Gaza on the mistaken belief that if we improve civilian life in Gaza, create jobs, create opportunity, Hamas's psychopath leaders won't launch this war. They went straight on TV and said, we tricked the Israelis. We made them think that we were concerned about the civilians in Gaza, all the while we were taking that money to build the tunnels and the weapons and the rockets we are firing at Israel. If we had known, Mr. Hassan, what Hamas was going to do on October 7th, perhaps we should have started a preemptive war to eliminate that threat before they could have burned the semen of children alive on October 7th.
Okay, so the last point, I definitely don't agree with, like a preemptive war. But the first point is I don't know enough about this, so maybe somebody else can come in and correct my claim, substantiate the claim. I don't know. I'm not the expert on this, but I am watching this debate and efforts to learn more. And of course, I do lots of research before and after these debates. But it does sound like he's making a pretty good point there. That okay, we were attempting to help, and then they turned around and did this. Of course, in the context of the occupation, I don't think that claim works very well.
But we didn't.
Okay.
Hamas
All right.
tricked us,
Time out.
and we won't
Time out.
repeat the same mistake again.
Time out. Going to take a little bit of a 10-second breath and slightly lower the temperature, but only slightly. Eylon, you were making the argument that Israel's actions are justified in the pursuit of the destruction of Hamas. We've come to the point, though, where even Israeli military officials are saying it can't be destroyed. Therefore, what happens to that argument that the justification is the destruction?
Okay, so what he's saying here is true. According to the Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari from the IDF itself, he states that while they could probably severely degrade Hamas's military capabilities, eliminating Hamas completely as an organization is probably unrealistic, according to local news channels. According to DW, the Rashid Khalidi, the professor of Arab Studies, argued that while Israel may severely weaken Hamas, destroying Hamas as a political institution or idea is not feasible. And then if you try to compare just historical context, such as things like the war in Afghanistan and Iraq, the way the guerrilla warfare works, it makes it almost impossible to completely destroy the ideology or group unless, in this case, they do an entire genocide of Gaza. And that's what's going on right now.
Therefore, what happens to that argument that the justification is the destruction of Hamas if it's an organization, a movement that can't be destroyed?
Of course Hamas can be removed from power, just like ISIS was removed from power. ISIS is now a terrorist organization that is trying to blow up concerts in Austria. It no longer can...
Okay, but that's not what you said before. And it's funny that you defer to military military experts in one sense when it comes to destroying Gaza, but you don't want to agree with them when it comes to the fact that you cannot destroy them.
Controls territory the size of Austria. Following this war, we cannot allow the Hamas terrorist regime, it's not an organization, it's a terror regime and a terror army, to regroup, restock, rearm, and keep shooting rockets at our towns while it is still holding civilians. It is a regime that must be removed from power because we know exactly what it wants to do if given half a chance, and that is to do October 7th again and again. And Israel's war, Mr. Hassan, I'll yield the stage to you and ask you, eliminating the Hamas terror regime, removing it from power, a legitimate military objective, yes or no?
Of course, it's a legitimate military objective for Israel. And that's what I quoted the ICC chief prosecutor saying, but you're doing a very bad job of it. What's interesting?
Do I understand that after October 7th?
What John
do
said,
I understand? No, because I want to clarify and understand we're on the same page.
You want to clarify, the guy who can't answer why you killed 15 civilians.
No, I want to understand that we are on the same page. Do you agree that
I'll answer your questions when you answer
7th,
mine.
It was legitimate for Israel to remove the Hamas terror regime in order to prevent another October 7th? It's a yes or no question, Mr. Hassan.
No, it's not. It's a loaded question. I'm going to say it was legitimate for Israel to defend its citizens inside of Israel. It's not legitimate to occupy Palestinian territory for decades.
Yes, it's not a simple question. It's definitely a loaded question.
Remove decades on end. And let me answer. Can I answer what you came to
If I can rebut,
let me answer John's question. Let me answer
Eylon, you've had about 2 or 3 minutes in a row.
You asked a very interesting question of Eylon. You pointed out that he keeps saying, notice the sleight of hand. You said that he said, and he said it many times, not just here, Hamas should be destroyed. When you asked him, Israeli military experts in general say it can't be destroyed. Notice what Eylon said? He said, removed from power, quickly move the goalpost there, because he knows that Hamas can't be destroyed by these means. In fact, the former head of Israel's military,
said from
let me
the
finish
very
my point.
beginning.
The former head of Israel's military, who was a member of Netanyahu's war cabinet, he said earlier this year, quote, anyone who says you can destroy Hamas is telling tall tales. So it's not me calling Eylon Levy a liar. It's the former head of the Israeli military.
Mr. Hassan,
Oh, wow. Wow. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
from the beginning, Israel has said that its goals are to remove Hamas from power and dismantle its ability to wage war again, and to live up its threat of repeat October 7th. And that is why I ask you, after October 7th, was it legitimate for Israel to remove Hamas from power in order to eliminate the threat of repeat October 7th? Yes or no?
Very simple answer. Israel has the right to defend its citizens in its territory. It doesn't have a right to be an occupier. It doesn't have a right to... Let me finish the point, because you think they're your neighbors. The International Court of Justice says Gaza and the West Bank are occupied. They've been occupied every day since 1967. You did not withdraw in 2005. You blockaded,
I'd like to explain. I'd like to explain what the purpose here is of the legal fiction.
And I've already answered the question, Eylon. I've made the point that even if I was an Israeli general trying to destroy Hamas, killing thousands of innocent people only helps Hamas. Every terrorism expert in the world says you're a recruiting sergeant for extremist groups when you go and kill innocent civilians.
Mr. Hassan, whether
Why can
this
you not
war,
understand that?
whether
Why can
this
you not
war,
understand that?
Time out, time out, time out, time out, time out, Eylon, time out. I have a question for whoever wants to jump on it. Is Israel's war in Gaza making Israel more secure?
When this war began, Hamas had a fearsome missile arsenal that rained thousands of missiles on our cities. I had to keep running into a rocket shelter. Israel has now eliminated the threat of rocket fire from Gaza. It has cut off its smuggling routes. It has destroyed its missile silos.
Okay. So they made some accomplishments. 41,000 people later.
And it has destroyed Hamas's weapons capabilities.
And when I say people, I mean lives, just to clarify.
That alone has made us safer and makes it easier to sleep in our beds at night.
Three quick things. Number one, the Israelis went to Supreme Court recently, and they were having an argument in Israel's Supreme Court, and they put in the official filing that we do not control Gaza. Even after all this time, Hamas is still in control of lots of parts of Gaza. So they say the honest stuff when you're not looking. It's true. Number two, I interviewed Ami Eylon recently, former head of Shin Bet, former Israeli admiral. He said very explicitly, Israel will not be safe until we give Palestinians freedom. This is his words, not my words. And number three, I'm glad you had a bomb shelter to protect you, because the Al-Dos family in Gaza did not have a bomb shelter to protect them.
Okay. Another question. We have not yet talked about the hostages, and we should. Is Israel's action in Gaza going to is it for the benefit of the hostages?
Absolutely. Israel is fighting to bring the hostages home while Hamas is starving and torturing and raping them. We managed in November, because Hamas was being clobbered and it wanted a breather. They released nearly half of the hostages. We've sent in special forces to rescue hostages in raids my opponent has condemned. Israel is fighting to put the military pressure on Hamas to release the hostages, but Hamas doesn't want to release the hostages. And the reason it doesn't want to release the hostages is that it knows that the longer this war goes on and the more suffering it generates among its own people in Gaza, the more it advances its own goal of isolating Israel. And Mr. Hassan, it pains me that you do not seem to realize the role that you play within Hamas's strategy when you deflect blame onto Israel. Never demand any accountability from the Hamas regime. When you know that Hamas's goal is to maximize suffering, you give it a reason to drag on this war. If you want it to let the hostages go, you should tell Qatar to pressure Hamas to free the hostages.
Of all the demonstrably untrue things you've said tonight, this is the big one. So apparently, if you want a deal to end the war, you're enabling Hamas's strategy.
No.
That's what you just said.
No,
I'm enabling Hamas's strategy.
But you have systematically undermined every leverage Israel has to free the hostages.
You know who's undermining?
Stop pretending
Can I
you
answer
care
the question?
about the hostages.
Of the two of us, hold on. Of the two of us, Whose strategy has released more hostages, mine or yours? Because I supported a ceasefire.
strategy.
And we got, hold on.
Our strategy.
We got it. Can I
Your
finish? Can I
strategy
finish
is
my
to give
answer without-
cover for
let him-
Hamas's war
Can I
crime.
finish?
Let him
answer.
finish, please.
Over 100 hostages were released last November in the pause, in the ceasefire deal. A lot of Israelis wanted that to continue. Hostages' families wanted that to continue.
Yes.
Can I finish my answer? Netanyahu said no. In fact, I interviewed Zahiro Moore, whose uncle Avraham Munda was horribly killed in Gaza. Zahiro Moore, by the way, was arrested today. He's been arrested and attacked by the Israeli government that Eylon served in multiple times. He said to me, Netanyahu and the government that Eylon was part of, always choose the wrong way. Ever since October the 8th, everything they do is directed at not getting the hostages back. That is the plain truth. That is the nephew of a hostage. They don't want you to hear about the hostages. Eylon and people like Eylon use the hostages as political pawns. The hostages' families are standing on the streets of Tel Aviv opposing the Netanyahu government, calling for a
Oh man, and that's crazy. So there's substantiated fact there that they are actually using the hostages as an excuse to continue the genocide. That's just monstrous.
ceasefire, calling for a deal. They don't like Eylon Levy. They don't
Before-
support Eylon.
before-
Mr. Hasan, how many hostage
Before we-
rallies have you spoken at? How many hostages' mothers have you embraced
How
and
many-
hugged them
how many of
and
you
told them,
people-
I am here for
How many of
you,
you
whatever
people-
you need? I was at Central
Oh.
Park. I was at
Let me
Central
respond.
Park last Sunday at the rally for the
Now,
hostages. You were not. Mr. Hasan,
me
if
ask
you
you
really
this.
care about the
Let
hostages,
me ask you, we got
I
a
have
little
a
stunt going
spare
on here.
hostage pin
We have a
here.
little stunt
If you
here.
want to show them you
Got
care,
it.
you're welcome to put
Got
it
it.
on your
All right.
platform.
All right, this is fantastic. Let's go. So,
Put it on. Show them you
So-
care. Show them you care.
So-
I am in
Yeah,
daily
let's
contact
go.
with the
Can I
hostage
speak?
families. I tell them I will do whatever it takes to help you get your kids home. Show them you care and stop trying to exploit the
Okay,
hostages'
okay.
suffering.
This is like a-
Eylon,
going
allow
on
him to
here.
respond. You've got your bit of
So-
stagecraft.
So
Please take it.
Let's be clear. Let's be clear. You saw the very, very performative outrage there from Eylon there. To be clear,
I like that he points out and calls it performative. I love the way this guy argues.
don't you lecture me about hostages when your government has killed more hostages than it has rescued. That's on you. That's on
Mr.
you.
Hasan,
And as for this,
that is
And according to DW, the Times of Israel sources, yes, Hamas has, or rather, I'm sorry, the IDF has killed 31 sausages. According to DW and the Times of Israel, the IDF has killed 31 hostages while only rescuing 8. So that is also a true claim.
Hamas.
as for this,
That is on Hamas.
let me answer this. Let me
Hamas
answer this.
is
I will.
thinking-
All right,
I
all right,
will-
all right.
No, I need to finish this point.
I'm going to let you finish this point, and then we're moving on.
I will happily support this pin because I support the release of all the hostages and no, let me finish. And I support the release of thousands of Palestinian detainees being raped and tortured and children. Do you support that? Let's wear it together. Do you support the
Put it
release?
on.
Do you support the release of Palestinians?
I
Children.
do not
Do you
support
support
the
the
release of
release
terrorists.
of Palestinian children?
He's asking specifically, do you support the release of Palestinian children? And he responds with, I don't support the release of terrorists. What is wrong with this guy?
Do you support the release of Palestinian children being
Mr. Hasan,
tortured?
anyone
Let's
who is...
Do you?
get some space
He
here.
can't answer the question.
Mr. Hasan, he won't
I
get on the
answered it.
hostage pin.
I support the release of all innocent people.
Mehdi?
He doesn't.
It is quite damning that Eylon cannot answer that question.
That's all you've got.
Once
Eylon.
again.
Gimmicks.
Once again.
All you've got.
All
is
right,
gimmicks.
all right,
Once again,
all right,
put it on.
all right. I have one more question before we pivot to some questions from some journalists who are joining us. And I want to talk about America's involvement in this situation. The U.S. has been largely supporting Israel. If the war in Israel is unjustified, that implicates the U.S. in an unjust war. If the war is justified, then we have an ally that requires our help. Which is it?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
We have, it's about U.S. involvement in the war. If the war is unjustified, that implicates the U.S. in an unjust war. If it's justified, we have an ally that requires our help.
When this war began, President Biden said that Israel is facing sheer, pure, unadulterated evil. It was so obvious in the moment of shock after October 7th. that for Israel to defend itself, it has to dismantle the Hamas terror regime, that President Barack Obama said we must stand by our ally Israel as it dismantles Hamas. The United States has made valuable support to Israel in its goal of bringing down the Hamas regime. What we need is pressure on Hamas and its patrons, Qatar, Turkey, and Iran, to let the hostages go. That pressure has not been forthcoming.
I mean, before I came on stage, Gershon Baskin, who's Israel's most famous hostage negotiator, he WhatsApped me and said he's got a deal, 3-week deal on the table with Hamas that Hamas has agreed to release all the hostages and end the war. He says it's with Netanyahu. The ball's in Netanyahu's court. So when he keeps going on about hostages, tell him to speak to his former boss to agree to a hostage.
Gershon Baskin is the negotiator.
Oh my gosh. Like to every point that Eylon makes, like Mehdi Hasan is just tearing him apart.
As for the
In
United
whose
States,
deal to free
do stop
Gilad
interrupting,
Shalit,
Eylon.
we
You've
released
had your performance.
Yehia Sinwar.
As for the United States, it is tragic to me as a citizen of the United Kingdom and the United States that my two countries have armed Israel as it carries out what the ICJ has called a plausible genocide,
No,
as it
it
arms
has
a prime
not.
minister
Mr.
who is wanted
Hassan.
for war crimes.
Wait. So is Eylon trying to say that Israel is not being outfitted by the U.S.? I'm curious to see his response.
Mr. Hassan.
The ICC chief prosecutor has called for the arrest of Yoav Gallant and Benjamin Netanyahu. The American government should not be arming a man wanted for war crimes. And Eylon Levy should have began his speech tonight apologizing for working for a man who is wanted for war crimes.
Wow, this is he's laying it out to what it actually is. I understand that Levy is trying to defend the idea that these aren't war crimes, but factually, that is what shooting children in the head is a war crime, and Levy still hasn't given an answer to that, or the other questions about targeting non-military targets.
By the ICC chief prosecutor.
Mr. Donver, you called me to account at the beginning of the debate and said I should not have called my opponent a liar. The former president of the ICJ, Joan Donoghue, had to go
and
on
many
TV.
other judges disagreed with her.
Had to go on TV
The
to
American
explain
judge who
Let him
that
speak.
her ruling did not define there was a plausible genocide.
Actually, the
she
other
had to
judges
go on
disagreed with her.
TV to
Collective
refute
voting.
the lie. The only reason for you to make that
ICC
lie,
chief prosecutor
the
called for an
only
arrest warrant, Eylon.
whose arrest warrant claims were
Did the
based on
I'm on Mehdi's side, but bro, you gotta let this man finish talking.
All right, this is not helping. We are not able to hear what anybody is saying. We're not able to hear what anybody's saying. You're both talking at the same time, and I'm talking at the third time. So let's stop this. I have a question for each of you before we pivot, which I want to ask you if you can answer without attacking one another. And I'm also curious to see if you can do it in under 20 seconds, because we're just curious. Each of you came to this debate, and by your decision to participate, we saw on social media that both of you were attacked by members of your own camp for being even on the stage with somebody who's holding the opposing view. But you showed up anyway. Eylon, why did you show up? 15 seconds.
Because Iran, the Palestinian nationalists, and their allies are waging a war of misinformation that has one purpose. They want to destroy Israel. And they think it will be much easier to destroy Israel if they convince the world that Israel deserves to be destroyed. A full campaign of the most ridiculous lies to try to convince good, ordinary Americans that when they're ready to pull the trigger and massacre us once more, they should stand to one side and say, well, the Jews had it coming. And I'm not willing to allow that to happen.
You recall the question?
Statement.
Sorry?
Okay, just a 20-second answer.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I believe that what is happening in Gaza, the killing of 16,000 children, the genocide in Gaza is the great moral tragedy of our time, the great crime of our time. And I will go almost anywhere and take a stage with almost anyone to try and bring that war to an end and convince people that the war needs to end now.
May I add something?
No, we have to move forward. All right, we're going to bring in some other voices now. We have some journalists. We have 4 journalists who are each going to ask one, I hope, very short question. There are people who have been writing about the area for a long time, particularly about the situation now. and they are certainly not monolithic in their own views. I first want to go to Peter Beinart. He's a journalist who's written for Time, the New York Times, The Atlantic. He's former editor of the New Republic and editor-at-large of Jewish Currents. Peter, if you can stand up, there's a microphone, I believe, in the aisle for you, and ask your incredibly short question.
Thank you. Eylon, you suggested that the goal of the war was to depose Hamas from power, but on October 11th, Benjamin Netanyahu said the goal of the war was to destroy Hamas. On October 12th, Yoav Gallant said, the defense minister said the goal was to wipe it from the earth, because I think they understood that even deposing Hamas would not necessarily make Hamas less of a fearsome threat. The Taliban didn't become less of a fearsome threat to the United States.
I'm not sure what he's trying to get at, but yeah, there is an inconsistency in statements there.
Once they stopped holding power, Saddam and his forces didn't become less of a fearsome threat once they no longer held power. They recognized that winning this war meant destroying Hamas. And yet your own former colleague, Daniel Hagari,
Peter,
the IDF spokesman,
question?
said it's not possible. To be clear, I'd like you to be on the record. Do you think it's possible to destroy Hamas, or were Netanyahu and Gallant wrong?
Yeah, this is a very good question. I know he's probably going to sidestep to answer, but we'll see what he does.
I believe it is possible to remove the Hamas terror regime from power.
Question.
Whether leaders used belligerent rhetoric that exaggerated the goals of the war. No, look.
Okay, no. At first you said specifically one thing, and now you're saying something different. You're moving the goalpost.
Hamas needs to be destroyed. It's an idea. Some ideas deserve to be destroyed. And whether that idea is destroyed or not depends on the lessons that the people of Gaza take from this war.
And how do you do it without genociding the entire Palestinian people?
Will they conclude that terrorism is a dead end, that their leaders have repeatedly led them into disaster after disaster as part of their forever war against a Jewish state in any borders whatsoever, or will they take the lesson that in fact they were rewarded for the October 7th massacre? That is what is at stake here, and we are trying to convince the people of Gaza terrorism is a dead end. There is no light at the end of that tunnel.
And you also get to respond. You can respond.
Want me to answer? I think Peter made the point very eloquently. It's a nonsensical war aims. The real war aims, of course, are what the Israeli ministers say. When Smotrich says the aim of the war is to annihilate Gaza, that is the aim. I take him at his face
Mehdi
value.
Hassan,
When he literally said that.
Smotrich
And when they say
doesn't
this
sit in
stuff,
the
when they
war
talk about
cabinet.
resettling Gaza, when they talk about staying in Gaza, that is what they mean. This is
Position
not
in
about.
which we
Can I finish and
repeatedly
answer,
said
Eylon, one
is
time?
not government policy and goes against government.
I would just say this.
Yeah, let him
say
finish,
this.
please.
You want to convince the people of Gaza that terrorism is a dead end, then stop inflicting terrorism on them.
Every accusation is a confession, Mehdi?
Our next question comes from Gillian Lederman. Gillian is an editorial fellow at the Wall Street Journal, former chief executive chair of the Israel Leadership Network. Gillian, thanks for joining us, and what's your question?
Thank you. My question is, given the current circumstances, do you believe that Israel pulling out of Gaza in 2005 was the right decision?
Who's that a question to?
It's a difficult
Let
question.
me just ask you, Jen, are you pointing that to anybody in particular? Both can answer it, but okay.
Israel withdrew from the Gaza Strip in 2005 and never wanted to go back. It gave them Gaza. They had the option to turn it into Singapore. They chose to turn it into Mosul. They could have had a thriving state in Gaza after Israel pulled out.
No, they could not have, because Israel continued to occupy them. They've been occupying them since 1967. That is a fact.
And Jewish organizations paid to donate the greenhouses. Instead, they chose to rig Gaza for war. The tunnel network under Gaza is the largest public works project the Palestinians have ever undertaken. They did it for the sake of the October 7th massacre.
Was it a mistake to pull out? That was the question.
I don't know.
Okay. No, fair enough. Fair enough.
Simple answer is, of course, Israel did not pull out of Gaza, as the ICJ has pointed out just recently. Gaza is occupied territory. Let me put it very simply to you. What Eylon doesn't tell you is when they pulled out, they kept control of Gaza's land borders.
Yeah, because they occupy them still as we speak.
Not with
sea
Egypt.
waters.
Not
with
with
Egypt.
Egypt.
With
Of course
Egypt.
we control the
Israel and
borders.
Egypt
We're on the other
kept
side
the
of
land
it.
borders. Have you noticed I never should answer without an interruption? The land borders, the sea waters, the air, and wait for it. and the population registry. If you're born in Gaza, you have to be registered with the Israelis. If you were born in New York and your birth had to be registered with a foreign country, would you say you were occupied or not occupied? Would you say you're a free people or an unfree people? It's an absolute lie. The occupation never
Oh, he's making such powerful points here. I wouldn't feel free.
ended.
Israel ended the occupation of Gaza in 2005.
Then why did you keep the
international
population
law.
registered?
Let-
No, let me interrupt you. Why did you
Israel-
keep the
No,
population
wait,
registered?
hold it. We are done with the interruptions. It's just
when it's my
destructive. So you go.
The
you be
population
quiet.
registry
Your
isn't
turn,
an
Chris.
interesting question because Israel runs it in cooperation with the PA as part of the Oslo Accords. Hamas is free to run its own population registry because it has effective
one
control
territory under
inside Gaza.
international law.
Mehdi,
Under
you'll get your shot.
international law, occupation requires the effective control of territory. Everywhere in the world, it is understood to mean boots on the ground. And the only reason to fabricate a new standard to say that just because Israel doesn't allow Hamas to build an Ismail Haniyeh international airport means that it is occupied is as part of a campaign to try to make Israel responsible for civilians
okay.
in Gaza
No,
so
sorry.
Hamas can take the resources
Okay,
and
Eylon,
funnel them into the war
Eylon,
machine.
we're losing
I've
sight
got
of
to
the
respond to
question.
this briefly, very briefly. Eylon, a moment ago, you all heard him proudly quoting the former president of the ICJ. The ICJ literally, the other day, said Gaza is occupied. But Eylon and I went to the same university. We did the same degree. He didn't do law. He's not a lawyer. The ICJ says Gaza is occupied. It's over. The debate's over. You've lost that one.
Right. I mean, sometimes you just have to take facts at face value, and it's people who are full of hubris that just cannot take facts.
Oh,
And you're
that's
gonna
not
lose
the
this
end. That is not
Jillian.
the end. Because
Why is
a
it the end?
basic principle of
You're wrong.
One moment.
The ICJ disagrees. You're
a
done.
basic principle.
Jillian, do you
done.
feel that your
Jay,
question was answered? Was it a mistake to pull out of Gaza? Because I don't. But we're going to move on. Thank you for the question. It would be helpful, and I realize you're both very passionate and have a lot to say about this, but it would be helpful, at least at the beginning of your answers, to stick to the questions.
I did. I said they didn't pull out because they never pulled out. I mean,
Okay.
I don't accept the premise of the
All right, fair enough. You
Israel
question.
pulled
No,
8,000
next up.
settlers.
Next up.
It ripped people out of their
I know.
homes. It gave them an
I
opportunity.
I was there. I witnessed it.
Wow.
He witnessed it, Mehdi. It happened.
The part that you're talking about.
Oh, this
Next up,
discussion
we
is
have
just,
Dean Obeidallah, a lawyer, a comedian, and a journalist who has hosted the Dean Obeidallah Show and a frequent commentator on CNN, MSNBC, and the Daily Beast. Dean, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. I have a question for Eylon. You've defended everything the Israeli military has done, everything. And Mehdi's gone through it. My family lives in the West Bank. My question is there anything that you would condemn Israel for in terms of killing Palestinian Christians and Muslims, or are they all inhuman in your view and not worthy of any sympathy, dignity, or self-determination as a people?
oh man, this guy is pissed, and oh my god, he has to answer this question correctly, or he's just gonna be branded as a monster.
All right. Hang on a second. Hang on. I have an issue with the question. The first part of the question, is there anything you would condemn from Israel? Legitimate question. But the assumption that if he feels differently, that he has no sense of the humanity of Palestinians.
Yeah, okay. I think it's fair framing, but in the context of a debate, you probably shouldn't frame it like that. But yeah.
There's a bit of some baggage loaded into the question. So why don't you take the question? Is there anything that Israel is doing that you would condemn?
I have gone on TV as a government spokesman when the army said that there was a particular mistake and a certain target should not have been hit. We fess up and admit our mistakes because that is what a responsible military should do.
And yet you couldn't do it at all during this debate. You didn't even do it just now. Let's see if you do it in the next few seconds.
You can answer that.
Okay.
But Israel is fighting an enemy whose use of war crimes is strategic and systematic. They're not investigated on Hamas's end. No one is ever called to account. Its use of war crimes against its own civilians while they hide behind them in their schools and hospitals to fire at us is strategic and systematic. And so I stand by my country as it fights to use proportionate force to dismantle the Hamas army of terror. Because yes, my neighbors are human.
Okay,
Because
hang on.
I want a better future.
I have
for
an
them.
important
please, because
I have a very
humanity-
important technical program.
Wait, hold on. You said that because yes, that your neighbors are human, and yet that's the first time that you said anything about your neighbors being human this entire discussion. I find that very hard to believe. That you truly believe that statement.
Note, I've received a message that the audience clapping volume is so loud that in the recording, very frequently, it's been impossible to hear what our debaters are saying. And
Don't clap.
And so what I would like
then
you to
they
do is to clap in between their points. Let them finish and then go for it, please.
The gentleman challenged my humanity, and I would like to defend it.
I tried to let this
I
go.
want a future of peace between us and our neighbors. That cannot happen as long as the Hamas terror regime is in power.
Okay.
On the subject of, I'll wait for the applause. On the subject of Eylon's humanity, I asked him earlier if he supported the release of Palestinian children. He refused to say so. He can tonight. We'll all wear this pin. Let me
Mr.
say
Hassan,
this on the
any
West Bank.
children?
Let me say this on the
talk.
West Bank. He cannot help but cherry pick the evidence. He cannot help but cherry pick the evidence. He just said a moment ago, he tried to gaslight you. He said, Hamas is never held to account. Actually, the chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court gave out 5 arrest warrant requests. 3 for Hamas, 2 for Israel. I
wow.
support all of those arrest warrant requests. Do you? Do you?
Oh wow.
Mr. Hassan,
Do you?
He can't.
It's
he
a
can't
yes or
answer
no
that.
question.
every single
It's
line,
a yes or no question.
He can't answer that question.
every single
Do you
line.
support accountability for all of them? At the
Absolutely,
ICC's
but
arsenal?
you and what
Do
army?
you support arrest warrants
Because
for
you
Netanyahu?
and
Wait, now we
I
can't
support
hear what you're both
accountability.
Do you
saying.
support arrest warrants for Netanyahu?
No,
Oh.
Mr. Hassan, because every
so only
single
okay, one
line,
side.
every single line in the request
some of us
for
are
arrest
consistent.
warrants
Wait a
by
minute,
the-
wait a minute.
by the prosecutor
Mehdi, we
of the
can't hear
ICC is based on lies, like the allegation of starvation, impossible to reconcile with over 1 million tons of aid that have
There are
entered
literally
Gaza
69
since the start
trucks
of this war.
going in right
Aboard
now.
more than
That's a lie.
52,000
It's gaslighting.
trucks. 52,000
69 trucks right now. Do you
According to the Times of Israel, 14,000 aid trucks, roughly, or 328 trucks have entered Gaza for humanitarian aid, but it's still said that that's likely not enough for what is going on there. Just to clarify that.
Do you know that?
Mr. Hassan,
69 trucks, according to
who?
15 aid agencies.
Who are they
Who should we
quoting?
believe? 15 aid
Who are they
agencies
quoting?
or you and
All right.
Netanyahu?
Mr. Hassan, who are they?
All according to the Times of Israel, what Mehdi Hasan here is talking about is the 69 trucks have entered on some days. Have only 69 trucks have gone in. So he's basically saying that not enough aid have been rendered, but it's not 69 cumulatively. I think that there's a slight disparity there. So that's just a heads up on that information.
Should we believe?
Mr. Hassan,
15 aid
Mr.
agencies
Hassan.
or you?
These aid agencies are quoting UNRWA.
The aid
Do you
agencies are
believe that
Hamas.
UNRWA's statistics are accurate? Yes or no?
Actually, no. they're
Excuse
not.
me, wait a minute,
Because
wait a
on
minute, wait a
their
minute, wait a minute, wait a
dashboard, but
minute.
if you don't
Wait
know
a
their
minute,
statistics
wait a
are
minute,
accurate,
not
wait a
quoting
minute,
UNRWA.
wait a minute,
That's a lie.
wait a
Sorry,
minute.
That's a lie.
This man has said "wait a minute" like 4 or 5, 6 times, and I just won't shut up. I guess Mehdi's not shutting up too, but guys, come on, can we debate cordially, please?
Is this helpful?
No.
Yes, for some, okay.
Well, nice. Do you stop?
I would just like to ask you to take turns
Okay.
and
I'll wait.
not talk at the same time.
Got it.
Yes, please.
You're doing worse at waiting. Get better.
Wait. At least he points him out.
Over 1 million tons of aid. Now, according to Mr. Hassan, I don't know what double-digit number he quoted, comes from UNRWA.
1
UNRWA's own
million
dashboard
tons
on
of
its
aid.
website says that this is an incomplete register of data, that it cannot monitor all the cargo going in. Israel is monitoring it. UNRWA is undercounting it by a factor of 10. That's how you get to the bizarre statements like imminent famine in Gaza, because the IPC Review Committee said that that assessment was based on not counting all of the trucks that have gone in.
Okay, according to Human Rights Watch and the Institute for Middle Eastern Understanding, there have been blockades since 2007, and Hamas that reported by Oxfam and Human Rights Watch that say that essentially food insecurity in Gaza is relatively widespread. There was economic strain since the 1967. Reports estimate that 60% of Gazans were food insecure by 2010 due to trade and movement restrictions. And then the policies impacting movement movement of resources in Gaza have led to some rights group describing conditions akin to apartheid, worsening poverty and access to food. So while there may not be as widespread starvation as there may be going on now as a result of the war, historically, yes, they've had issues with food.
They literally undercounted trucks in order to make this horrific allegation of starvation.
So the entire...
Eylon, your point is made.
To the speech?
Let's respond.
So you just began the whole answer premised on a lie. It's not based on UNRWA statistics. It's based on their own experiences
They do not
at Israeli crossings. David Miliband, Eylon. David Miliband, a man you know, we're both British in front of this audience. David Miliband was the former foreign minister of the UK, very pro-Israeli politician, served under Blair and Brown, not some Palestinian lover. David Miliband said on CNN, our trucks are being stopped because they're finding a tiny little surgical scissor or a nail clipper and they're sending the trucks back. David Miliband is not some hater of Israel. Cindy McCain is the head of the World Food Program. She is the widow of the most pro-Israeli senator of my lifetime, John McCain. She has accused Israel of blocking aid trucks, killing aid workers, starving children. Cindy McCain is not UNRWA or Hamas.
Man, this guy has facts on top of facts on top of facts. I think Eylon it's floundering here, or Eylon.
Dean, we are a long, long way from the question you asked. I don't know. That's bad moderating.
I can't even remember the question.
We have another question from John Levine. John is a political reporter for the Sunday New York Post. He has credits on CNN.com, The Atlantic, The Chronicle of Higher Education. John, thank you for joining us. And come on in with your question, if you could stand up.
Okay. Thank you both for being here. My question is for Mehdi. I think it's an easy question, so I hope we can get a direct answer. I'd like to ask you about your new media startup, Zeteo. In May, Rolling Stone reported that
John, this has got to be on the point we're debating.
It relates to Qatar, which I believe was brought up in the debate.
We're debating whether Israel's actions were justified. That's not on point. I'm sorry, I got to pass on it.
I'm happy to take the question. John, I'm happy to take the question. I'm happy to.
We're not here to debate. We're not here to talk about your career.
I'm happy to take the question.
I know you are, and I'm not. So I'm sorry, John. If you want to come up with a question that's on point about Israel's actions in Gaza, go for it, please.
Yeah, I love this moderator. This guy plays no games, man.
Yeah, I can, because this is a debate where you ask questions.
Put him in his place. I love it.
I mean, now I really want to ask the question. I'm just curious. I just want to answer the question.
You can talk afterwards. All right.
I mean, the dude works for the New York Post. I prefer not to talk to him, but... It's not my debate.
Thank you.
Thank
you. All right. We are coming down to the end for our closing statements, and that's where each debater has the floor again exclusively to make their case one more time for you. Eylon, you're up first in this. One more time to remind people, I think they know that you're arguing that Israel's Israel's actions in Gaza are justified. You can take the floor, and you have 2 minutes to tell us why. 2.5 minutes to tell us why.
After the sadistic massacre of October 7th, Hamas immediately told us, if you leave us on our feet, we will do this again and again. It wasn't enough to cremate little children. It wasn't enough to commit acts of gang rape, pedophilia, necrophilia. It wasn't enough to gag people, bind them, tie them to trees, and strip them. They told us we're coming for you. If you leave us on our feet, we will do this again and again. This war has been horrible. We have paid a horrific price for it. We are trying to prevent the threat of a repeat October 7th massacre. And we are fighting a sadistic enemy that rigged the battlefield in a way that said, we've hidden our military assets under civilians.
It's very interesting that some of the egregious things that he said at the beginning there are things that Israel has done in response, which is also Agreed. This is just messy. War is not good in any way, guys.
The way that you can get to us is by going through civilians. And that's why Israel has taken more actions than any military in the history of the world. And so every commander from Afghanistan and Iraq will agree. In order to keep the civilians safe from their own leader's sick strategy of trying to sacrifice them, that is why it keeps telling them to evacuate. It never designated a safe zone where Hamas terrorists could abuse hostages.
According to the Institute of Middle Eastern Understanding, Israel did designate certain safe zones, such as Salah al-Din Street, marked as safe passage, and then some of these places were still stricken. That is a fact, according to IMEU and Buzzsprout.
With impunity, it told them to go where it is safer and where Hamas is not. And on every occasion, it has been stymied by UN agencies saying, no, keep them in Hamas strongholds.
No, I don't know that this is true. I'll have to further look into that. But based on what I just said, according to IMEU, no, they did designate safe zones, and that did still end up bombing most of those safe zones.
By Hamas trying to fight to keep them in the strongholds, while we try to keep them safe from their own psychopath leaders. I asked Mr. Hassan, removing Hamas from power, legitimate, yes or no? And he wriggled out of it. He said, well, defending Israel is legitimate, but not the point you go into Gaza. Okay, his response, end the occupation. Let Hamas have an Ismail Haniyeh International Airport. Let it have a Mohammed Dev naval base. There is nothing you can do with a terror regime that is sworn to your destruction, whose goals are legitimately genocidal. We need this war to end. But we need this war to end in a way that ensures that Hamas cannot restart it at a time of its choosing, feeling emboldened and empowered because of international pressure generated by people like Mehdi Hasan to keep saving it from the wars that it starts.
That very last statement is probably the strongest point he's made this entire time, which is basically, yes, we have to do something about Hamas. They're a terrorist organization, but it's just so convenient for them that this aligns with them committing a genocide with the help of American aid.
And I just need to say it. And Mehdi Hasan, you have the final word in this debate one more time. Your argument for why Israel's actions in the Gaza war were not justified.
Ladies and gentlemen, were the actions of Israel in Gaza justified? Look, the argument is pretty simple tonight and pretty hypocritical from Eylon. What we've heard tonight is that nothing justifies October the 7th, but October the 7th justifies everything. Well, I'm here tonight to tell you, no, October the 7th does not justify everything. It does not justify the suffering in Gaza. It does not justify the killing of kids in
That was a powerful statement there. That the Israelis go with the idea that October 7th justifies everything. Yeah. That's a powerful statement there.
Gaza. It does not justify the starvation in Gaza. It does not justify the rape and torture of Palestinian detainees, which Eylon refused to condemn tonight. It does not justify any of that. It doesn't justify the tearing up of the Geneva Conventions, the defiance of international law and the ICC and our own Leahy law. Yes, October the 7th was a war crime, but the response to a war crime is not to commit your own series of war crimes on an epic scale. 33 times as many people killed since October the 7th as were killed on October the 7th.
Wow, 33 times as many. That is egregious.
And I'll say this to you. Look, very, very clearly, if you support this motion tonight, you are opening the gates of hell, not just in Gaza, but globally, because every dictator and tyrant around the world will say, Israel's actions were justified? Then so are mine. Putin, Assad, Kim, they'll all say, Israel killed kids. Israel killed aid workers. Israel killed journalists. So can we.
Oh, wow. It does set a certain precedent, and it is very dangerous. He's making a very good point here, and it's actually kind of terrifying when you think about it.
And I will be very clear. I will be very clear with you tonight. If you are here tonight, ladies and gents, if you're here tonight to defend what Israel's done, knowing full well what Israel has done, if you're defending the human suffering in Gaza, the amputation of little kids, if you're doing that in full knowledge, then you're not just here to defend the indefensible or justify the unjustifiable. I'm sorry, you're a sociopath. And I will say to you,
You are a sociopath. This guy is not holding his tongue at all.
Don't, please, 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 don't be a sociopath tonight. Don't support war crimes. Don't defend a genocide. Join me and every human rights organization in the world, every humanitarian aid agency on the planet, every American doctor and nurse who's been out to volunteer in Gaza. Join us in opposing this ridiculous and offensive and horrendous motion. And on behalf of the Al-Dos family, who Eylon clearly doesn't give a damn about, I beg to oppose this motion.
Oh man. Okay, so my analysis is very clear that Mehdi Hasan destroyed him in this debate. There's no question, in my opinion. He made several claims to which Eylon couldn't answer. He had statistics and he had facts ready. Well, Eylon, I'm sorry for mispronouncing the name. I'm not trying to. I'm just horrible at names. I will try to find the correct pronunciation of the name and say it properly. I don't want to sound disrespectful in that way. But in any case, Eylon and wasn't able to really answer any of Hasan's questions this entire time. And the only thing he can really say is, "Oh, well, we're justified because they hit us on October 7th," which I do agree that October 7th was horrible. I do agree that Hamas should be eliminated, but we have to really sit back and think about the tactical way of doing this, because the military leaders themselves said that there is no way to completely destroy Hamas, because Hamas is an idea, and there's something powerful about ideas. Go watch V for Vendetta. Go read some books by Alan Moore. Anyways, I'm going to sign off for right now. Catch you guys next time. This is Jean with the Skyfall Sessions. Please like and subscribe if you like content like this. I'm going to continue to try to find more, get debates like this, and do a little bit of commentary, because I really want this information to get out to the people. You need to see debates like this and understand what is going on in them. So yeah, I'll catch you guys next time.